Life happens. With ADT, you can feel safe with an ADT starter kit professionally installed for only $49. Call today and install an ADT starter kit that includes security panel, keypad, key fob, entry and motion sensors, and for a limited time, get a camera included and installed at no additional cost. That's a $449 value installed for just $49.
Requires 36-month monitoring contract, QSB, and easy pay activation. Early term fees may apply. Certain marks excluded. License available at ADT.com, Florida EF001121, UBZ F1639.
Some of the best guests show up in person, and that is Ryan Clark. Joins us in studio, giving us the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. There's a lot of things we can get into with you in college and the NFL, but as a former DB, I got to start here. What did you make of the Aqib Talib-Michael Crabtree showdown, the sequel in Oakland Sunday?
Well, first of all, here's my largest problem with Talib. Yeah. When he threw to the left, why are you ducking? You got on a helmet. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Crabtree got no helmet on.
Right.
Aqib's got a helmet on. You should be leaning
right.
into
You should
that.
be going straight forward.
Yeah.
I think the one thing is it was ugly. You know what I mean? This is definitely not something you want to see. Both of those guys were dead wrong. But I take it back to the first chain snatching incident last year, right? Nothing happened. Remember, like Crabtree didn't fight him. Crabtree didn't react. But there also wasn't much talk about how wrong it was or what it could lead to. I mean, when you snatch a guy chain, first, I don't think you should wear them, but when you snatch a guy chain, it's beyond football now.
Right.
And for any of us who've ever been in an altercation and has been the bigger man, it bothers you. Yeah. You know, like when a guy gets in your face or disrespects you and you're like, you know what, I'm going to take the high road here. You know, you sit around like, man, should I have done something? You know, did this guy.
A lot of testosterone on
right,
the field.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and so then it gets to this point. And really, when you see what Crabtree did, like, I like that. He was like, you know what? I'm not gonna at first, at least, I'm not gonna punch him. I'm not gonna be dirty. I'm gonna finish a block. I'm gonna do this through physicality and pads, which I thought was good. And then it just turned into something else. And we now know that all football players shouldn't be boxers.
Let me tell you, I'm with you on the chain thing. You just see nothing but bad things when you see the chain come out, and especially with the history of these guys. My wife had said to me, well, maybe next game Crabtree shouldn't wear a chain. I said, not only will he wear a chain, it may be a rope chain. It may be some monster chain.
Run DMC all the way.
It'll be the turnover chain.
The turnover chain.
No question.
I'm with you. Jeff Saturday said the same thing. I was on Twitter with Jeff Schwartz, a former offensive lineman. We were talking about it. I loved that Crabtree finished that block out of bounds. You know what?
That's what you're supposed to do.
But even if you get 15, take the 15, send the message, but then get up and get back to the huddle.
I agree with that.
Don't start the boxing match where you both get kicked out. Then your teammate runs in, and Gabe Jackson, and he pushes a ref and gets thrown out. It got ugly where it didn't need to.
Right.
And I don't know what the next part will bring with this, but I guess then the larger question to this is, we thought the AFC West was going to have, 3 teams in the playoffs.
Right.
And now you have one that keeps losing, yet they're winning the division because all the other teams keep losing.
They're kind of making it fun, though. They're making it fun in like a bad way.
Yeah.
The one team that may make it may be the Chargers.
Yeah. Starting 0-4.
If you watch all 4 of them play right now, they're the team that scares you most. I mean, nobody can block Ingram and Bosa.
Nobody.
Phillip Rivers is the ultimate competitor. Keenan Allen's now come along and got healthy. This team is scary, especially when you're playing ball like the Chiefs are. You're playing ball like the Denver Broncos and the Oakland Raiders, who we never know what we're going to get week to week, but we know it won't be good. And so, you know, right now, that's the one team in the AFC West, if you're an AFC team that you don't want to make it, is the Chargers.
You more surprised at the fall of Denver or the inconsistency of the Raiders?
The fall of Denver, because of the way it looks.
They were 3-1.
Right.
They were 3-1.
Exactly, because of the way it looks. And it seems, and you know, John Elway used the word soft. I won't use the word soft, but the things we thought we knew about them, which was defense, and it was physicality, and the way that they rushed the passer and stopped the run early on in the year, those things have gone away. Not only can you not score the ball, but you can't do what you were once really good at.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And it goes back to with Denver, really, the quarterback situation's a mess. I mean, Trevor, when they were blocking and were able to run, Trevor was a fine quarterback.
Exactly.
But once you take those things away, Trevor can't be the guy that's going to sling it all over the field. We saw what happened with really 3 of the worst interceptions I've ever seen in one game, that game against Kansas City.
It was,
He was a Waffle House, as Herm like say, just serving them up. Just serving up.
So, he was like Oprah now. You get a pick, you get a pick.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And so... But when you look at this team, I just remember last week listening to Vance Joseph talk about making a coordinator change, and he felt like what he wanted to do was have a more competent passing game and not turn the ball over. Sometimes that's not the coach. It goes to the guy that's taking the snap, and they don't have a guy. So you have to kind of start looking at John Elway, who understands and who knows the quarterback position. Is he going out and getting the right people for these coaches to teach?
And again, the two quarterbacks he has on his roster now besides Simeon are Brock Osweiler and Paxton Lynch. Both are 6'7", and we've never seen a quarterback that tall be that successful in the NFL. So they've got to get that figured out. But Denver's, they're done. They're lost 7 straight. One other team in the AFC that is far from done, although it was a little tighter last night than I think as a former Steeler you would have liked it, was the Pittsburgh Steelers. They got the great kick from Boswell to avoid overtime, 31-28. What did you take away from that game as a Steelers fan? Obviously, you're happy with the win, but...
Well, first thing I take away, Antonio Brown's really
that catch
really good.
Can
get him in the field goal.
That's my expert opinion, Trey. I don't know.
Way to break it down.
So I just want you guys to know, man.
That limb is pretty sturdy that you went out on there.
Hey, I just want to. Sometimes you got to go out on a limb and make some bold statements. Looking at this defense, which I thought had improved early on in the season, obviously Joe Hayden is missing right now. But when you look down the line and maybe having to go to Foxborough or facing Tom Brady, people can't be wide open.
Right.
People can't just run free in your secondary. You can't miss tackles the way that they've missed tackles, even watching the Indianapolis Colts, who had an opportunity to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. They need to shore up the tackling and find ways to be closer to people, make hard throws. It's Brett Hundley, a guy who I've been on the record as saying this, I don't think was ready to be a starting quarterback in this league. And last night he looked good. He got in a rhythm because there were people running wide open in the Pittsburgh Steelers secondary. And they can't have that if they have dreams and aspirations of, as Coach Tomlin would say, hoisting the sticky Lombardi.
The Steelers?
Sticky Lombardi?
Yeah, because he says everybody touches it and kisses it.
Right.
Which is why I never actually touched it after the game, because all I would think about was he's like, it's sticky and people are touching and kissing it.
I would be touching it and kissing it and doing all those things to it.
Yeah, I did it. I made love to it on the plane.
Okay.
Actually.
Okay. Important information.
Way more information than we probably wanted, but we do appreciate that very much.
I don't ever want to touch Lombardi.
But to your point, they're second in the league in sacks, only behind Jacksonville, which means nothing if you can't cover and the quarterback can throw in rhythm. Yep. Quarterback throws in rhythm. It doesn't matter what kind of rush you get, they're going to get rid of the ball. So let me put you on the spot because you just said that about Antonio Brown. Standing in front of you are two receivers, and you can only have one.
Julio Jones.
Okay, there you go. That's what I'm saying. Antonio Brown, Julio Jones. I would take Julio Jones as well.
Just for the size.
I was, and I said it last night on TV. I think Antonio Brown is the best receiver in football. One, because of the targets, and also because of the amount of catches he makes when targeted. But when you're drafting the guy and you're taking the guy, they don't make Julio Jones.
No, they
don't. He's
freak,
Loch Ness monster.
Yeah.
You never see that type of guy, and for that reason, I take it.
Well, what's the stat? He had 259 yards receiving. He's the only player in NFL history with multiple.
Yeah.
He got 3 of them.
Ridiculous.
Nobody else has more than one.
Record.
He got 3.
Yeah,
more importantly, on DraftKings, he got you 53 points. Which,
did you have the money, by the way?
No, my son Mike had him. Had him and scored big there.
The smart Golic.
Yeah, well, whoa.
But to that point, real quickly, we talk about all these teams. Is Atlanta sort of finding their rhythm again?
They are.
They've sort of become what we thought they could be before that little meltdown.
We're talking about the Saints. Been talking about the Saints lately, and I was talking about the Saints 3-game stretch of Rams, Panthers, Falcons, and I was like, by the end of this, the Saints could be third in the NFC South, and you knew eventually, with all that talent on offense, the Atlanta Falcons would find their way. They still need to shore some things up on the defensive end, but you knew they'd start to score points, and we're seeing that now.
So along those lines, we've been asking pretty much every football analyst this, is we think that the Eagles, rightfully so, are at the top of the NFC. Which other team, next team, or which team in the NFC would give them the best competition the way they're structured and the way Philly's structured?
I'd been on the record as saying the Saints because I believed in Drew Brees more than all of these other quarterbacks. Whether you're talking about Goff or Case Keenum. With the way Minnesota is playing defense right now, and that's their one consistent. The Saints, it hasn't been as consistent as you would like, especially down the stretch with some of the injuries in the secondary. If they play today, as the teams are, the Minnesota Vikings, because when you can lock up on the outside, rush 4, it at least gives you an opportunity to make things harder on Carson Wentz. If the Saints get some more guys back healthy and his defense can play like they did through that 8-game stretch, I may change my mind. But today, on this Monday, watching games this week, and the Minnesota Vikings seem to be the team that would give them most trouble.
Which means you're all in on Case Keenum, which seems to be more than the Vikings.
Coach.
I mean, Mike Zimmer, by the way,
he makes it really difficult.
Coach.
He does, doesn't he?
He's a great coach. He had a half a smile the other day. I thought it was awesome that he actually has the facial structure or muscles that turn that lip that
Goes
way.
it up?
Yeah,
Instead of down, turn that frown upside down. Yeah.
That way. And it's hard to not be all in on Case Keenum.
What are you missing?
When he's shown you week in and week out that he can produce, and he seems to have this rapport with the receivers in Minnesota that we haven't seen under Mike Zimmer, period. No matter who was quarterbacking him. Sam Bradford, Teddy Bridgewater, we haven't seen this type of consistent good quarterback play.
Well, and that's the amazing thing. Look, and I get it. The Teddy Bridgewater thing, first of all, the fact that he's back from that injury is amazing, and you want him to do well, and you hope everything goes well for him. But when you hear people say, well, our upside's better with Teddy, how do you know that?
Right.
How do you know that? Based on what? From 2 years ago?
But do we not remember them saying that or having the word that Teddy Bridgewater was actually holding the passing game back in a way?
He couldn't push the ball down the field.
Push the ball down the field.
So not saying he can't do that later.
Right. So so that was kind of the narrative. So from the sample size you have, he has never outplayed Case Keenum, the guy that is playing now. And what happens is, and you guys know this, you have a perception of a dude before he starts playing.
Correct.
Case Keenum, we thought Case Keenum was this one thing. We've always seen him as that, and it's very difficult to change that perception to many people. And I think for Mike Zimmer, it's extremely hard to finally move on and say Case Keenum is the dude we've seen in 2017, not the guy that came into the season as the backup.
It's interesting. We talk of the NFC, obviously Philadelphia and Minnesota, New Orleans, we mentioned Carolina, Atlanta, the Rams and what they're doing. Have we given up on Seattle because of the injuries in the secondary and no running game and the O-line worries? Are we pushing them to the side?
It's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, it is.
Because they're squarely in the hunt.
Yep.
You're one game behind the Rams. You have a game against them at home, and so this is a team who could still fight to win the NFC West, and we don't talk about them. I think it's about the optics. It's the way it looks. As soon as Russell Wilson snaps the ball, he starts doing like curly derby. Right, yeah, exactly.
Where am I going?
Right, like where am I going? And then he's like, okay, when I get out of the pocket, now I'll find a guy. But it's been working for them. And if you look at their schedule, they can win every game. You have Philadelphia coming into their place next week, which is a huge game.
Yeah.
And so they just don't seem like the team that can win it all. They don't seem like a team that can win the championship. And now Seattle has set such a high precedent and the bar is so high for them. That is the way we measure them. We don't measure them on ability to compete and be competitive.
Well, that's the interesting thing, too, because they're just that team where every once in a while you think, yeah, they're done. They find a way to come back. Even that game against Atlanta.
Yeah.
I mean,
they were right
that was
there.
A blowout, and then they had a chance at the very end to send it into overtime. But you just wonder, can they consistently rely on Russell to do everything?
And I think that's the problem. A couple of weeks ago, we saw a game where he couldn't, and it was hard to watch. It was hard to watch when he couldn't manufacture plays, himself and by himself. And when you look at this team, they're still the Seattle Seahawks, but they're not our Seattle Seahawks.
Right.
They're not the team we understood was going to bludgeon you, physically impose their will on you. They can't do that anymore. And when you're expecting Russell Wilson to make magic, not every game, every play, it's tough to rely on that down the stretch in the playoffs.
Who else are we buying to in the AFC? We talk about New England and we say, okay, their biggest competition is probably Pittsburgh if the defense can be more consistent, especially in the back end. Who after that? We just
the Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback by anybody but Blake Bortles.
I mean, that's the thing. We just destroyed basically the AFC West, right? So we mentioned Pittsburgh. So it's Tennessee and Jacksonville both sitting at 7-4. I mean, where are we going?
I watched both of those teams play. You can't believe in either of them right now, and so it does seem like a two-horse race right now. And if you watch the New England Patriots play, who by the way have the MVP. He's probably not going to win it, Tom Brady, because
probably Wentz,
because we're going to compare him to the other Tom Bradys that we've seen. But this
one still is pretty favorable comparison.
Exactly. But the guy quarterbacking right now for the New England Patriots is the MVP of the league. His team is playing at a high level. He is playing at a higher level than any quarterback, including Carson Wentz, but we just compare Tom Brady to Tom Brady.
Well, absolutely. And people are like, well, let's give it to – no, Brady is playing phenomenal.
He's unbelievable.
He's going to throw
right
for
now.
over 5,000 yards for only the second time in his career. The last time was 2007. So he's playing at a very high level.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, hang on one second, because speaking of playing at a very high level, we had to get him on today.
Coach!
Avery Johnson, the Alabama head basketball coach, joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Avery, I got to say, what we saw over the weekend from your team was unbelievable. For those that didn't see it, there were mass ejections and an injury and a foul out. So the Alabama basketball team had to take on Minnesota for the final 10-plus minutes, 3-on-5. And you guys were down almost 20 points, and you came back at one point to make that a 3-point game before losing by 5. First of all, that's the greatest coaching job of the weekend. Let's be clear about that.
Absolutely.
Avery, what was going through your mind when you realized I've got to go 3-on-5 for 10-plus minutes?
Wow. Well, first of all, guys, good morning and congrats on the new show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Excited about you guys, and I'm glad to hear that Ryan's on today, and that's my homeboy. So
You already know, Coach.
yeah, but it's amazing because in practice we work on these defensive disadvantage drills where we'll have 3 defenders, and they'll defend against 4 offensive players or 5 offensive players, and we talk about, hey, if we got 3 defenders on defense, you got to scramble and rotate out of your zone and sprint to contact and rebound and contest shots and get back and protect the paint, and we work on these drills every day. So that wasn't the abnormal part for us. But on offense, we talk about, hey, if we have 3 offensive players against 5 defensive players, hey, wait for your 2 trailers so that we can get organized. But when the guys were pushing the ball up the floor, there were no trailers, and they didn't have any of their teammates on the bench. So now I'm kind of contradicting myself, and I'm saying, hey, guys, split the traps, even if it's a disadvantage and you got a 25-foot three-pointer that you think you can make, take it. If you get trapped, move the ball, sprint out of the trap. So it's crazy of how I had to contradict myself of what I teach the kids in practice, especially on the offensive end.
Hey, Coach, I hear that. You hear this with all the technical talk, all the coach speak. But what was your message to them on the sideline when it's 3-on-5? Not like how do you want them to play the game? Were you telling them, hey, guys, we can win this, we can pull this off, we can come back? Or were you just trying to get out of there with a respectful showing? What were you telling your guys on the sideline to get them to continue competing the way that they were?
Well, when we started cutting the lead and, we got within, 5 points, and, we had a timeout, I would say, hey, guys, we might as well try to win this game. We're right there. This could be you guys can make history here. So we were drawing up plays, trying to figure out how we can, set some sort of flare screen to get Sexton or Riley Norris open. And fortunately we drew up a play and we ended up making a 3 on the left side of the floor that cut it to 3 points. And then we came back down and had another good look at a fadeaway, 2. But I was really proud of our guys. But to tell you the truth, guys, it's just a competitor in all of us. We were actually trying to win. We weren't trying to get a moral victory. But at the end of the day, I'm proud of our guys. But we learned a lot because obviously we can't have any of our players come on to the floor. So we'll look at it. But the kids, they were holding their heads up high because they gave maximum effort and in an unfortunate situation.
Well, we're talking to Avery Johnson, Alabama's head basketball coach on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And again, they had to play 3-on-5 last 10 minutes of the game with Minnesota and got within 3 of that after being down a lot and ended up losing by 5. And again, it was part players coming off the bench being ejected, some foul outs, some injuries to where you had 3 players. I want to go back for a moment because you just said it too easily. When I'm drawing up plays, tell me when you ever in your life, outside of a 3-on-3 tournament, drew up a play and said, okay, guys, sit down. I'm going to draw this up. Because I don't know, do they all sit down? You have a moment on the court and go, what the hell am I going to draw up here? How do you draw up a 3-on-5 play?
Well, when you're an unemployed coach and you're working at ESPN and you're in the green room waiting to go on one of the shows, you have a lot of time on your hands. So those are the things you do. So I started doing that. that maybe when I was working in the media. But the main thing is you just try to, teach our kids that under any circumstances, life is not going to always be fair. If you have adversity, you still fight through it. You keep your composure, and that's what our staff and I tried to do in those situations, was just keep our composure, encourage the kids, try to call timeouts where we can get them a quick break so that they can kind of refuel a little bit. But there was no surrender, no withdrawal. We wanted to try to win the game and compete to the very end, and we think we represented the university in a first-class manner outside of coming on the court by the way we finished the game.
Well, look, you certainly did. I mean, the hard thing is this is one of the greatest sort of efforts in the history of the school, and not many people saw it because it was going on at the same time as the Iron Bowl between Auburn and Alabama. But your three players basically outscored Minnesota down the stretch, I think 30-22. It was unbelievable. 19 by Colin Sexton, 19 of his school freshman record, 40 points. Look, you couldn't finish, but it was an unbelievable effort. And we wanted to get you on, Avery, to say we enjoyed the effort.
Yes, sir. Good job,
enjoyed
Coach.
the effort of it all. It was just fantastic. So,
and then, you know what? I know Colin's going to get a lot of attention, but Riley Norris and Galen Smith, those guys were out there on the floor with them. And John Petty, who basically, a kid ran under him and he sprained his ankle. Yep. He was, one of the four guys out there. And Dejon Ingram, before he fouled out, was out there. So take your hats off to those guys. And we're just glad that Alabama basketball is getting a lot of positive publicity. We were in the top 25 at the start of that game, and hopefully we'll continue to stay in the top 25 all year long. But thanks for having me on.
Y'all number one in 3 on 5.
That's exactly right, man.
You're 1 and 3 on 5. I'll tell you that. Forget 3 and 3. You're 1 and 3 on 5.
Great job, Avery.
Avery, we appreciate it. Thanks for being with us.
Roll Tide. Appreciate it.
Let me tell you what. Those three guys that finished that game are getting praise everywhere, and those guys that left the bench and got tossed, they're doing a little 5 a.m. running and throwing.
Absolutely. You already know it.
Oh, heck yes.
You already know
Ice baths for those three, and everyone else is on a coffee run.
Exactly
what's going to happen. ARC, we appreciate you being with us today.
I appreciate you, my man.
We'll watch you on NFL Live later on today. Sunday's Best is always going to be out there for you, right?
You already know it.
Come on, baby. I know how that thing goes.
And a great piece on Sean Taylor.
Oh, thank you very much.
That was really, really. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years.
10 years today.
10 years since he passed.
Yes,
wow.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I'm so happy, I feel like I can fly.
Disclaimer, you will not be able to fly by switching to Geico. This is against the laws of physics and nature. If you find yourself flying, please seek professional and or medical help immediately. In the unlikely event you find yourself flying, you might be a superhero, or a pigeon, or a superhero named Pidgewoman, who was bitten by a radioactive pigeon. If you are indeed Pidgewoman, Geico retains all licensing publishing rights in the event Pidgewoman the movie becomes a top-grossing Hollywood blockbuster.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
We are Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests joined us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. So, as we alluded to in Sports Center, Mike, there was a lot that happened in college football over the weekend, which is exactly what you want this time of year, because you don't want it to be layup drill of these four going through these final weeks, and then you know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. We do know that the winner of the SEC championship is going to get into the college football playoff. I think the winner of the ACC championship is going to get in, don't you?
I think so as well.
Junior seemed to
he was a little hesitant,
on that.
but I think so as well. If Wisconsin wins the Big Ten championship, they're absolutely in. And if Oklahoma wins the Big 12, they are absolutely in.
Which means if all that happens, Alabama, which has been the consistent number one team for most of this year, would be out. Now, after the loss in the Iron Bowl to Auburn, which is a tough place to play, I get it. It's a road game, but they were dominated. They were dominated.
Auburn looked
by
good,
Auburn.
and let me tell you, Alabama made some uncharacteristic mistakes, but you credit Auburn for putting them in that position. Auburn looked fantastic. Keon Johnson, you got to wonder how he is physically. He left that game.
And then his replacement came in. Martin
got hurt as well. So we have to see how that's all going to work out for the SEC championship game, in which they already blew the doors off Georgia once. So we'll see what happens in this title game.
All right. So after all of that, Auburn head coach Nick Saban suggested that Alabama head coach. Boy, that's a big one to mess up. There you go. Bama's head coach Nick Saban suggested that the Crimson Tide still deserved a chance to play for the title.
I think this team deserves the opportunity to get in the playoff by what they've been able to accomplish and what they've been able to do. Certainly not maybe in this game, but I think the team we play tonight's a very good football team and probably one of the best teams in the country. They've won 11 games. Not very many teams are able to do that. And I really don't know what all the scenarios might be where we would have an opportunity to do it. I'd certainly like to see this team get the opportunity to do it, and I think they deserve it.
I mean, it's going to be very cut and dry after the selection show tomorrow night, when the committee gets together and they put out the top four. The top four, in whatever order you want, is going to be Clemson, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Auburn. Those are going to be the top four. And the bottom line is, if all four of those teams win, they're going to be in, right? I mean, so those teams, with one game left, Clemson will play Miami, Oklahoma will play TCU, who they've beaten already, Wisconsin will play Ohio State, and Auburn will play Georgia, who they've beaten already. If all four of those teams win, it's over. Those are the four that are going to be in. And what Nick Saban is talking about is, as he said at the end, I don't know the scenarios, but then the scenarios start happening. If Georgia beats Auburn, well, I think Georgia is going to be in. And then the big question is going to be if Ohio State beats Wisconsin, because Ohio State have 2 losses. Well, they then, as a Big Ten champ with 2 losses, would they still go over an Alabama team with just 1 loss to an Auburn team, which is looking like one of the best teams in the country?
Okay, so let's assume tomorrow night that, let's say, Alabama's 5th. Okay, they're 5th.
They could be 5th, and Georgia could be 6th.
Correct.
Unless Ohio State's there, maybe Ohio State's 7th.
But if Georgia wins that game, they're getting in.
They're getting in. Exactly. But you could potentially, in the top 6, have 3 SEC teams.
Right.
Which is
amazing.
Crazy. Yeah.
All right, so the question then becomes, let's say Ohio State beats Wisconsin.
Right.
Now, Wisconsin, if they handle their business, they're in.
Right.
But let's say Ohio State beats Wisconsin handily. Okay? Now you're on the committee. Where do you go? Do you go Ohio State?
Wait, Ohio State beats Wisconsin. I thought you said the other way.
No,
okay.
Ohio State beats Wisconsin.
They spank them.
Okay, they split. Okay. Yeah, let's say more than double. Let's say at least 2 touchdowns or more.
Okay,
and not the 59-0.
Right.
A few years ago, which was crazy. But let's say that they do that by at least 2 touchdowns or more. You're on the committee. What do? Do you take a 2-loss Ohio State conference champion, or do you take Alabama, based on the fact that they've been the consensus number 1 for most of the year, but didn't even get into the conference championship game? What do you do?
I mean, at the end of the day, what I do is, whether people think you're supposed to do it or not, but you have to remember the committee are human beings. At the end of the day, you know what one of my criteria is? Because I've watched all these teams play, I just flat out go by my eye test of who I think is better.
And who is your ey test right now?
Alabama, to me, is better than Ohio State.
Better than Ohio State.
Yes. I think Alabama is better now. Again, dealing with a lot of injuries, but that's the way it goes. Michigan's playing with 3 quarterbacks this year. Even Ohio State played without JT Barrett, got, with his knee hurt in pregame, however,
the camera and all that kind of stuff,
about. Yeah. But if one of the criteria for me is going to be my eye test, and I do think Alabama is better than Ohio State. Now, again, what the committee comes to is what's the breakdowns? Conference champ versus a team that didn't even play in the conference championship. But that happened last year, with Ohio State getting in, not playing in the conference title. And now they are playing in the conference title. Wouldn't it be odd if the year they do play in the conference title and win, they still got jumped?
Right.
Or someone went in before them.
They don't get in when they didn't happen and it happened the year before.
Exactly. Right. But I know people are saying, what's Alabama's signature win?
Well, that's the question, because we know what the issue is with Ohio State. Forget the Oklahoma loss. I mean, Oklahoma's a very good football team.
Oklahoma's a very good football team. You got shelled by Iowa.
The Iowa issue. Okay?
And you got shelled by Iowa.
Huge. It was 50-something to 20-something. I know that's so technical, but okay. So let's look at the Alabama schedule. Now, the big one was Florida State, week 1. 24-7 when Florida State was ranked 3rd.
Right.
And then it's Fresno State, Colorado State, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, A&M, Arkansas, which they got rid of Brett Bielema, Tennessee, LSU, Mississippi State, Mercer, and the loss to Auburn. Where is their signature win?
Well, I mean, you're going to look at LSU at the time they were 19. Mississippi State was 16 when they beat them. So those are the ones you're going to look at. For Ohio State, I mean, they beat Penn State when they were number 2.
Yep.
They beat Michigan.
Had to come back against Penn State at home.
Yep. They destroyed Michigan State. Michigan State was number 12, and then they got beat pretty badly by Oklahoma when Oklahoma was number 5. If you look before the weekend started, the strength of schedule for Alabama was 60. The strength of schedule for Ohio State was 53. and then Alabama played Auburn.
Right.
And Ohio State played Michigan.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know a lot of people are saying, where's Alabama's signature win? But there are those that are going to say, for Ohio State. Do they have – they got destroyed by Oklahoma. Penn State, what a game that was. But
crazy.
Penn State sitting there, obviously, with their 2 losses as well. And then Michigan State, I mean, that was a monster game. They just absolutely buried Michigan State 48-3. That was a monster win for them. So, you look at top 40 wins, or top 40 wins and loss. Alabama is now 4-1 because they lost to Auburn. Ohio State before last week was 1-2 in top 40 wins.
Right.
The way it was. So, I guess that's the thing about it. You go through all those numbers. You'll look at the schedule. You look at the wins. The bottom line will be Ohio State does have 2 losses. Okay, one to a very good team in Oklahoma and one to Iowa where they got shelled. Alabama has 1 loss to an Auburn team who very well may be in the Final Four if they beat Georgia again. And I think Alabama's a better team.
Well, it's interesting, too, because, yes, Auburn dictated to Alabama in that game. But you know what? It was a home game for Auburn. I mean, when you have a rivalry game like that, if you're a good team, you should take it to a team on the road like that. I think some of the issues that hurt Alabama here is the lack of really any consistency in the passing game from Jalen Hurts. That was just not there in that game, way, shape, or form. And we have this image in our heads of what Alabama defense has been over the last 5 or 6 years. Really, it was really as long as Saban has been there. And it just didn't seem like that defense was being that dominant force that we've seen out of the Crimson Tide in years past.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you. I understand all that. Ohio State, if they beat Wisconsin, someone tweets in, it will be 2-1 against top teams. Bama would be 0-1. It's not true. When Bama played Florida State, they were number 3, so they would actually be 1-1. You go with what they were
sliding scale of where they were when
you played them. So I guess that's the thing. It will be close. So what's yours? And that's the thing. We're human beings. The committee's human beings. What's your separating? But what separates it for you, and who would you choose?
It's hard because in trying to read historically what the committee has done, they've sort of changed their stance.
Well, they absolutely have.
Like we said. So, you drill into your heads that it means something to be to the get to the conference championship game. Well, that didn't happen last year. But to me, the fact that Ohio State gets there, I don't know. I think that if the fact that they're playing for it means a little more, but you're right. The 2 losses, the Iowa loss is hard to get around.
It is.
It's hard to get around. And I think that some people are ready to move on from Alabama because they've been there so many times.
Right.
At the end of the day, they might just be the best other team to get in there. And we haven't even mentioned the Pac-12. Which could have a USC team with 2 losses. Or
a TCU beating Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship, which I don't think TCU would be getting in either.
So, again, a lot of this, we'll talk about this tomorrow as well because we'll have the show at 7 o'clock. We'll reveal who those 4 slots are and who aren't at 5 and 6. But something that else happened this past weekend that we haven't really talked about was the coaching carousel in college football. And that may be even more interesting than some of the playoff scenarios. We'll get to the top hirings and firings next. Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. One quick thing that's been lost in all the Ravens, which they've sort of won ugly a lot this year, they already have 3 shutouts on the board.
They do.
3 shutouts. When they had that unbelievable run in 2000, when they had that great defense with Ray Lewis and everybody else, they had 4 shutouts that year. So they have a chance to match what they did already.
Right now, listen, forget the division. Steelers sitting at 9-2, Ravens at 5-5.
Yep.
So the wild card right now is Jacksonville at 7-4 and the Bills at 6-5. The Ravens can get to 6-5 after tonight. So they're right there. The way they started out that defense, you started thinking, man, okay, but it's been a little up and down.
But then obviously, the offense has been sort of
exactly right, and that's why you sit there at 5-5. So, and even the Texans at 4-6, though losing your top 2 defensive players, your quarterback that was going to be rookie of the year, you're really climbing a hill. So I would slide it more toward the Ravens, and could they sit there and make themselves a bit of a run at the wild card, which would be just about almost exclusively because of their defense.
Oh, absolutely. But it's going to be difficult. But we talked a lot about what went on in college football this weekend and some of the games and some of the craziness at Tennessee. But can we talk a minute about 2 hires that we think were home runs?
Yeah.
You want to start with Dan Mullen?
Dan Mullen, and a lot of people saw this coming, that Dan Mullen was either going to be up for the Tennessee job or Florida job, that he was going to have his choice on that. And the Florida connection, for those that may not know, he was the quarterback coach and OC there when Urban was there and Tim Tebow was there and they were winning national championships. He was also with Urban at Utah when they helped develop Alex Smith at quarterback as well. And what does Florida need desperately is they need offense. Their offense has been anemic, been horrible there. So you bring in a guy that's used to obviously working on the offensive side and has had success with teams in the past doing that. So I think it's an excellent hire for him going to Florida, a guy who's been there, who kind of knows what's going on there, and can just step right in and start to turn. You know, you can get obviously great recruits. There's a lot of competition in Florida for the top recruits, but offensive guys, man, this is what these players look at.
Right,
5-star athletes, these top recruits. What they look at now is what kind of offense are you running? How will that help me, and will it help me get to the next level?
Right.
That's what a lot of these guys are looking at. And Dan Mullen is going to get that offense going. He's going to turn that offense around. And the one thing that helps for a young player is right now their offense is horrible in Florida. So if you go to Florida, if you're a top recruit, the thought process you could have is you could play early. You could get some time early in your career, then that could really help you.
And if I had told you that Chip Kelly going to UCLA would have been like the 8th least talked about college football tidbit over the weekend, you would have said that's crazy. But that's what it is. And this is another home run hire.
Oh, I agree. How about the amazing thing of the talk of Chip, or at least the reported talks about the shoes and the but Nike and right. Adidas or Under Armour, what schools were, because of his relationship with Phil Knight when he was with Oregon and Nike and such. Just hilarious about that. But I agree. I think it's another home run we all know the type of offense he runs. You know, he wants to run 80, 90 plays per game, wear people out. You know what he's all about. Came to the NFL. We all remember that first game against Washington. We were like,
it worked for a week.
Oh, my God, the NFL has changed. And a few of us are like, hold on. Just kind of like when Robert Griffin III was running zone reads and everyone's like, oh, my God, this is the new NFL. We're like, hold on. Not going to take over the NFL, just like his way wasn't going to take over the NFL, but it can work in college. Yeah. You know, and it has worked in college. So I agree. I think it's a very good hire for the West Coast. Used to be, obviously, with Oregon being out on the left side of the country there, and the recruits he can get out of California as well who want to play in that up-tempo type of offense. Because let's be honest, it's what it's about in college.
Yes.
It's about recruiting. It's about these guys going in and making sure they find a way to get those top recruits, especially offensively, to come to their school.
What Chip wants to do and the way he wants to play, especially with the quarterback, it's never going to work in the NFL because it's not sustainable for all the hits that the quarterback's going to take. And he also likes to rotate in 4 or 5 separate sets of defensive ends. You just can't do that with a 46-man roster.
Right.
You can do it in college, and that's why it's going to be interesting to see those waves and waves come again. Hey, brother, you know what? We managed to make it through the first show.
My gosh, it's over?
There's nobody outside the office saying, give us your passes, so we're good.
Do we have to come back tomorrow?
Sadly, well, you tell me. You've done this before, all right? We're doing it again tomorrow?
Yeah, I think we're going to show up again tomorrow.
All right, we got guests tomorrow. Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, will join us. Paul Feinbaum will join us to talk about everything going on there, and Louis Riddick. Hey!
Sounds good.
The lights are still on, and there are still donuts to be
eaten. Let's have a party!
Successful first voyage, Golic and Wingo. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.
See you.